Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashlee Westerhold, and I am an area extension economist. And today I'm going to be presenting input cost trends. And so just another year where you get to see my face doing these ag outlooks, and maybe it will look a little different this year. So why do input costs matter? And I always like to start off my slides of explaining why do input costs matter? Well, we as producers, I will speak as if I'm a producer myself, we are kind of price takers in a lot of senses, and you'll hear that with all the commodity specific outlooks. But what we can do is minimize our cost, or at least try. So I know 2020 is weird for everyone. It's especially weird for me, but I think that we look into 2020 and we say, what has been the biggest challenge of farming in 2020? And there are many answers to that. But one thing that we can control is trying to minimize those costs. We don't know where the markets are. We can't necessarily do market prices, but we can try to minimize those costs that we are seeing on the farm. So just something to look forward to of why this matters. Again, it's hard to change those market prices. So these were projections through 2028, 2029. And you can see that they flatten out. And we see that it's really going to be something like 2020, a pandemic, to really change those market prices in the future. However, they do flatten out as we become more efficient. And so I just wanted to show that again, that USDA makes these projections, and it really is interesting to think of these market prices flattening out. So what all is talked about under input cost? And again, interest rates, custom rates, labor, power cost, fuel, fertilizer, chemicals, seeds, feed cost, and cash rents. And so these are kind of the things that I'll be talking about today and really going over what the trends have been up to now. So the U.S. cost of production outlook, they really only show this outlook for specific crops. The two crops that are very important to Idaho include the barley and wheat, which you can see that they've made a 2020 forecast and a 2021 forecast. And you can see that actually the cost of production outlook is not really changing. It is up 0.01% for both when it comes to total costs listed. So again, you're not seeing that big of a change between this year and next year when it comes to cost of production in forecasting. So where are these changes coming from, though? Are we seeing changes? And so when we look and dive deeper into that U.S. cost of production for wheat and barley, we find that there are changes. You can see that fertilizer costs actually went up. And so we saw that in 2020, and that could be because of foreign trade. But we see chemicals are down, custom operations up, fuel, lube, and electricity up, repairs up, and then you see interest on operating capital. Farmers were actually not taking out that large of loans this year. They weren't having a lot of payments on these operating loans as much as they did the year before. So maybe that's because of government payments this year or what have you, but there has been a decrease on interest in operating capital. So I kind of went through all of these. And so what were the selected farm production expenses looking like from 2019 through 2020? Well, feed was a big thing. You will hear from our commodities, hay and forage, and also our beef commodity outlooks later. But feed purchases were actually higher this year. A lot more feed was purchased, even though we were feeding longer, potentially because of the supply of beef and people having to hold their cows longer because they couldn't get into the beef packing. Our labor, it increased as an expense this year. If you wanted labor in COVID-19 times, I think you had to pay pretty good prices to keep labor. Fertilizer, again, up. Seed, the same. Rent, higher. So even though we saw a pandemic, it did not stop our cash rent prices from increasing, which I'll go into. Pesticides, about the same. Property taxes and fees, a little higher, and that could be really coupled with those land value prices, which I will talk about. Livestock poultry purchases, they decreased. Interest decreased, and then fuel and oil, because the gas prices were in the tank. Luckily for us and people who use gas, it was very nice. But so you can see that reflected. So when we dive into specifically Idaho, we can look at seed, pesticides, fertilizer, lime, soil conditioner, fuels, oils, and electricity. And so you can see that actually most of them, except for fuels and oil, look like they have decreased slightly. And again, that might just because we were using a lot of trucking at this point. However, you'll see that all the rest of them have decreased from 2019. One thing that decreased is that this is cost of production labor. These are totals. So why did I just say that labor was increasing? Well, the wages actually increased, but the amount of labor that we used, because we were shut down for so long, actually decreased, really showing a huge drop in our total labor cost of production numbers. Again, these are for all of the state of Idaho. So if you were small production and you usually have seasonal workers, you probably didn't because of COVID-19. And so this is just showing that. It's not saying it was cheaper by any means. It was just saying that because of the times, we weren't employing as many people as we could. And so I just wanted to talk through that. So what are the lenders saying? I think a lot of lenders actually watch my talk, so I would love to hear from them in the Q&A box if they wanted to. But U.S. farms may face a profitability squeeze in 2021. So this was a survey done with the ag bankers and the Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation. So it's down 2019, it said that lenders said about 50% of their borrowers were profitable. And so in 2021, again, with these government payments, a lot of people were able to still make their lending payments and still make those requirements. So 2021 might be a harder year if we're not seeing as many government payments and still facing these potential price issues. But interest rates, I think we all know, really tanked this year, which if you are looking for a new house, maybe that was great for you. Maybe if you wanted a new loan this year, it was great because these interest rates have really gone down. And you can see that the farm real estate rates, they have just been continuing to go down through Q2 into Q3. And so just exciting if you wanted to get a loan this year and were up for one, or could refinance because they did drop. So you can see that when it's broken out for U.S. ag interest rates, that the real estate rate went down 17% from 2019 to 2020. Same operating loan went down 19%. In interest rates. Feeder livestock went down 15%, and farm machinery was down 12%. So all of those are double-digit decreases in interest rates. Again, if you wanted to borrow money, there might have not been a better year than 2020, as everyone was afraid, and so the interest rates just were completely down. So I'm not quite sure what 2021 will bring, but I would assume we will be riding these lower interest rates for a little longer. So go talk to your banker. So the custom rates in the US, this is based off of a baseline index where 2011 is our baseline. And you can see that with hundreds across the top. And then you can see the 2020 projection. Because we haven't ended 2020, it's still a projection. And so you can see that in custom rates, machinery, repairs, machinery was down, repairs were up. Diesel was down because diesel prices were down. Labor was up. Interest was up. And then the composite was actually down from 2019. And so all these prices are in prices paid. And it's a report that USDA really sends out just to show what the custom rates look like for producers. So again, I know those labor numbers that I showed were kind of misleading. These are the true numbers. We saw an increase in wages this year. And so they went up this year from 2019, and they've continued to go up. Even though we had unemployment, which I will show in the next slide, it was still hard to get people to participate in agricultural production or find good, reliable labor during this time of uncertainty. And so you can see that that's reflected in higher wage numbers for general farm laborer, equipment operator, and truck drivers. So all of them increased. And again, unemployment rate, when you saw COVID-19 and you think of March or April, skyrocketed, dropped back down, went back up, and now is on the downward slide again of the unemployment rate. And it's right now at 5.5%, and that's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As we see more things open up, or potentially with our new elected officials, we could see us close down again. There's so much uncertainty. There usually is, but we're talking about a year of the pandemic as well, and that just makes it all the more hard to estimate what employment will do this upcoming year. But right now, it seems to be okay. I don't know if it'll go back down to 2% like it was for so long, but we will see. So trucking in agriculture. Well, a lot of things have been actually passed, and so they have passed a lot of legislation to protect agricultural trucking. And so this was just posted off of a news source that FMCSA clarifies terms for ag haulers and farmers. So they're just saying that they still want farmers to have the opportunity, farmers and ranchers have the opportunity to get their product to where it needs to be so that it can get to the grocery shelves. And so they have less of those hourly regulations than normal truck drivers. And that is just, again, trying to help the ag industry, but I know that regulation was kind of up in the air the past couple of years, and just they clarified it this year. So Idaho power cost. Well, this year it's the same for the irrigation rates, and then we actually did see that the demand rate went down 1 cent. So if that changed anything for you, great. Hopefully 1 cent actually means a lot for you, but it was a small change because it was $6.98 and now it's $6.97 for the demand charge. So the 10-year Idaho average gas price. And so I think we all know that when we shut down, they were saying that barrels of gas were negative, and what does that even mean? But the gas prices hit a really good low, or a really big low, and I hope people took advantage of that when they saw that market and were able to prepay or buy gas, but it went back up again. And I think that's just because people started traveling again. And then it's gone back down as we are now having more states reverting back, especially Idaho going back into stage 2. So diesel price, it changed a lot in 2020 as well, and it went down again because of COVID-19, and now it's slightly on the climb back up. And so these, again, are just showing where the fuel industry has been. So crude oil price, which why do we care? Well, it actually ties a lot into what our other input prices are. But crude oil price dropped during COVID-19, and it's been on the steady climb up since. And you can see that it's been increasing fairly rapidly. Well, again, I just like to show this. How does fertilizer compared to that crude oil price? Well, it is very correlated with each other. And so if crude oil is potentially on an increasing rise, fertilizer is as well. And so I just want to make that known that if we're seeing an increasing rate in crude oil prices, you might see that reflected in fertilizer prices. So again, you see that fertilizer prices actually are one of the ones that went up in 2020. Fertilizer prices were up, and I showed that in one of my first slides about a 3% increase. And you can see that reflected here on the US DAP fertilizer graph. And then you have US urea, and again, it was increasing this year. So we're importing it, or there is just stops in supply. Or transportation, then we're not able to get it as readily as we would like, and that way we're paying more for it. And so that could cause these fertilizers to go up. So then we have the prices paid index for chemicals, fertilizer, and fuel, and this is from USDA NASS. And we see that through 2020, there is a lot of ups and downs. However, they think that 2021 will remain steady and flat when it comes to prices paid for our chemicals, fertilizer, and fuel. So now we're going to get into commodity specific. And so we have the barley, seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. And you can see that the fertilizer did increase this year. You see that seed and chemicals really had no change from last year. However, that fertilizer increase really might have hurt you and maybe dinged your wallet a little bit. So hopefully you were able to prepay because fertilizer prices seem to follow that crude oil price. For wheat, you see that fertilizer again increased a little bit. However, seed and chemicals remain about the same for Idaho wheat. And so just looking at that again to show you. For potatoes, you can see that a lot of things actually increased this year. Potato producers saw a higher cost of production. And so in mostly every category, it went up. And so I just want to show you guys that it's becoming harder to be more cost minimizing. However, I think you can do it. It's just something that we're finding in these input cost trends. So then we have the cow-calf producers. And what do the cow-calf producers really care about when it comes to cost of production? Well, it's their feed cost. And so their feed costs were actually higher this year. And I think you'll get some more information on that when we have the hay and forage outlook and also the beef outlook. But they actually went up this year to about $252 cost per cow for feed costs for the cow-calf producers. And then dairy producers, the same. They care about the feed costs. I actually worked with our dairy economist, and he said that about 49% of the dairy's cost of production goes into feed. And that could range from 49% to about 55% of their cost of production. And so $10 per hundredweight of the milk was actually to dairy feed costs. And so those have gone up this year as well. And if we see that other commodities are increasing, like feed sources, then we could see that increase as well. So now we get into farmland cash rents, and you can see that there's been huge increases in cash rents. At least I think they're huge, because usually we see about a 1% increase, but this year, according to NASS, irrigated farmland acres went from $216 per acre to $225 per acre. That's about a 4% increase. Non-irrigated went up an 11% increase, and then pasture land went up about 9%, just by $1, but it still are large increases for these already tight margins, and especially in a year with so many unknowns. Facing these higher rents is very hard and difficult, but we assume that they will continue to go up, that these cash rents, even though commodity prices should be tied to what you're paying in rent, we have a lot of competition for our land here, and so that leads to cash rent prices keep on increasing. So this is a map, USDA NASS sent this out, and it's just the land values, and you can see the states with darker shading actually have the largest increases in their land values. And you can see that Idaho is actually a darker orange than some of our surrounding states. We went up 3.7% in our land values, with our average being $3,000 per acre. But I just want to break that down for you. So you can see that Idaho land values per acre. And so we have the farm real estate, cropland, irrigated, non-irrigated, and pasture. And all of them have increased. And so we're seeing that farm real estate is the highest because it includes buildings, with about over $16,000 per acre. And I would say that's pretty close to what we're seeing around the Magic Valley, at least where I live. However, it's still very high. And if you are a producer that's trying to buy land, it makes it very, very difficult to do so. And so I just, again, wanted to look at these land values per acre. And so what is my outlook? Well, I think interest rates will remain low. I think that labor wages will increase, especially with the administration, what they promise as an administration of minimum wage requirements could be very interesting for our agricultural sector. Power costs remain unchanged. I don't think Idaho Power, when it comes to irrigation, is going to change that much. I think custom rate costs are going to remain unchanged. They might increase a little bit, again, especially if they're tied to these labor wages. Fuel prices, I think they're decreased right now. They could remain low. However, we'll see if we get put into another lockdown, they could decrease again. If we don't, then maybe fuel prices will increase. Fertilizer costs, I think they'll increase. And chemical costs unchanged. Feed costs, I believe they're going to increase this year. So if you are interested in buying feed, listen to the other outlooks, and maybe you'll decide if you need to buy more early or wait later in the game. So if prices are going up for inputs, what does that mean? Well, it affects our net farm income. It increases our cost of production. And then if you have low commodity prices, it can really bring a perfect storm. But you can contract your inputs. And I know I talk about this every year. And you might say, how do I do that? Well, actually, I'm working with a team of Western Extension members, and we're coming up with a negotiation class. And so if you're interested, please reach out to us. I'd be interested in sharing the information for you. But you can negotiate. And I just want to really push you or empower you to do that with these input suppliers. Again, just last, before I entertain questions, the University of Idaho wants to help you. We offer farm management classes across the state. A lot of them will probably be online this year. We also help on a one-to-one basis, and I work alongside our program coordinator, Sydney Hill, and we would love to help you with your farm finances. And so if you're interested, again, let us know and reach out to us, and I'd be really happy to help. And with that, I will answer any questions that come through the chat box, and happy to do so. So thank you for joining me, and talk to you soon.